So someone told me to react to this. It's like a documentary, I guess. And I didn't really want to do it. And the reason I say that is because I'm honest about the fact that I'm older, way older than some of these cats. So I know that my opinions on this are going to come from an old head point of view. You know what I mean? Rather than someone that's more in tune with what's going on. But at the same time, I can't be just hyping up these guys' music if I'm not going to talk about something like this if somebody asks me to. So I don't really, I have a choice, but I don't really have a choice, if you know what I mean. So this is called The Deadly War in Camden. Gxng, who I react to, I've reacted to a fair bit, versus 51st State, who I don't even know if I've reacted to be honest with you, because I didn't really know about this situation until now. So I'm about to find out.
Two men have been stabbed to death in two separate attacks in Kentish Town. Two men have been stabbed to death in two separate attacks in Kentish Town in North London last night. The body of the first victim, believed to be in his late teens, was found a couple of hours before police discovered the second victim, who's thought to be in his 20s.
Camden, the heart of fashion and culture in London, with some of the most expensive house prices.
It's interesting because I said this the other day about Camden, because I used to go there a lot as a youngster, and we never really, I don't know if it was active back then, but we never saw it as an active place. We saw it as a place where you had Camden Lock, yeah, and there was comedy clubs and all that kind of thing there, and all these funky bars, and you had Camden Market that was full of like gothic people and like DM wearing green hair cat. It seemed like a safe, just cool, eclectic place to be, a place to hang out. I think I used to go there and buy caps, or I can't remember what I used to go there for. And I used to go there to, was it Borderline, was that there? To like a hip hop show that was there, of people like MCD and Skinny Man used to perform, and Chester P, Mud Family, all that, they used to perform there. So that's what I used to go there for.
And biggest tourist attractions in England, and from the outside in, looks like the perfect place to live. But that's what the government want to show you. Once we go deeper into the lower income estates of the borough, we start to see a different story. A story of the country's most deprived estates in London being separated from roads of millionaires literally by one street, and how these estates have created a deadly gang war which has taken over the borough in recent years. But before I get into the video, be sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Let's get into the video.
So I have to be real again. Obviously recently I understood that these places were there, but as a youngster I had no idea about any of these estates. And I knew estates in London and centralish London as well, but never saw Camden as
So Camden is a borough in northwest London and is very, very close to the centre of London. But despite the area being so close to the rich centre of the capital, in the last few years the war in the area has been going brazy. So historically, unlike neighbouring areas like Islington and Brent, Camden's beef situation hasn't been as active as others. But this all changed around 2016 when a man from Camden called Merce had his watch stolen from another man from another area in Camden. After this, there was some back and forth, which resulted in a big rivalry in the borough, literally between groups of kids that grew up together.
You know what's scary about this situation is, I know it's about to get mucky, but it sounds like it all started over a watch, yeah? And that's what people have to understand in these situations, what is actually, like certain material things are so unimportant.
together. One side being gangs built up from a few estates in Camden, which were the Peckwater gang from the Peckwater estate, the QC gang, which were from a road in Camden called Queen's Crescent, and Cumbo, which is a gang made up from an estate called Regent's Park in Cumberland Market. They linked up together and called themselves 51st, due to their postcodes being in NW1 and NW5, which is where the 5 and the 1 come from. And from the other side of the feud, we have a gang called Active Gang, which some people may know from their songs, and they're from the Ager Grove estate in Camden. And Active Gang are affiliated with another gang called CT1 and NRB, which they all linked up and called themselves 71st. And just like that, the war was now on between 51st and 71st over this watch being stolen. So Camden is actually home to a big Somalian community, with a big portion of them residing in Ager Grove, which is the territory of the 71st gang. Such a big community that the majority of 71st members are actually Somalian. And if you watch one of my previous videos on Mali Strip, Somalian people are people you don't want to be messing with.
I tell you what, I'm not sure what he's about to say, but I knew quite a few people from Somalia, and what's important to realise that I understood from them was that a lot of them, they come from a war-torn place, and a lot of the kids that I knew, when I got talking to them, would say mad shit. Do you know what I mean? Like they've seen their uncle get killed in front of them, and just all kinds of just crazy stuff that just made me think, okay, just from what you've seen, you must be capable of certain things as well. Because if you've grown up around that, it's just gonna
understand more in this video. And this beef was on go from early. In 2017, 2 members of the AG gang, which represents 71st, executed a triple shooting on 3 51st members. 2 of the members ran to a nearby hospital, but while hospital staff was treating the 2 members, they also called police to the hospital to investigate the situation. Once the 2 realised the police was called, they didn't even care about their treatment anymore, and attempted to run out of the hospital while still having bullet wounds lodged in them. But the police ended up detaining them and arresting them after a struggle between the both. The reason they wanted to run was because all 3 members are actually wanted for suspicion of grievous bodily harm, which all 3 were eventually arrested for. Now, of course, 51st weren't happy about this triple shooting, and they were trying to get it back in blood. So they went lurking on the Ager Grove estate and shot a rival in the face with a shotgun. The rival actually managed to survive and make his own way back to hospital. But this beef really kicked off in a situation that wasn't even...
Like, if I was going to do stand-up, if I was going to do the UFC, I wanted to be fully charged.
Linked to both of the gangs. So on February 2017, a 16-year-old girl had an Airbnb party in Kensington. But this beef really kicked off in a situation that wasn't even linked to both of the gangs. So on February 2017, a 16-year-old girl had an Airbnb party in Kensington, West London. You know those type of parties where a girl invites 7 different types of gangs and asks people to leave their beef at home? Yeah, one of those. So at this party...
I don't really have much to say about that. But we all have been in that situation where a girl just thinks everyone... Anyway.
There were people from all over London there, but a few uninvited guests tried to pull up to the party. One of these people being a boy from 51st called Dotty and his friend, who pulled up to the party with a gun and knife looking for trouble. But the night turned left for Dotty and his friend, and ended up with Dotty being chased down by 20 young boys. And when
I've seen this before, yeah.
The boys caught up to him, they stabbed him 13 times altogether, which actually resulted in Dotty dying, which 4 16-year-old boys from Hackney and Tottenham were sentenced and convicted for. So 51st...
And you know what's crazy? What you have to understand when you look at this, you might be younger watching this, but when you look at this from my eyes, yeah, and I've been through that age group, and I did my share of... I was never a roadman, but I did my share of this and that. Coming through all of that and looking at those guys, and when he said 16, those are babies, fam. You know what I'm saying? And they chased down and killed another baby. They're not even... People are talking about a roadman. They're not men yet. At 16, you're not a man yet. Legally or physically. Do you know what I mean?
First were mad about the situation, obviously, that their member Dottie was just stabbed to death, so they were out trying to get revenge. So they went out for revenge in a stolen BMW and travelled all the way from Camden, northwest London, to Hackney in East London, and then to Tottenham in North London, because that's where the people who killed Dottie were from. But they ended up finding no one from both areas, but they weren't trying to go home without spilling some blood first. So 51st went all the way back to Camden to look for 71st members, and found an affiliate member of 71st called AK, and killed him. But they weren't done there. They were riding for a whole nother 2 hours looking for more 71st members, and found a 71st member called Mitch's little brother. Mitch's little brother attempted to run into a cab and begged the driver to drive him to safety, but the driver refused to move, and he was dragged out of the cab and stabbed to death by 51st members, all within 2 hours of their first murder they committed that night, and 6 members were sentenced to life for these murders. Then on September 4th, 2017, a member from 51st called Flips, and the older brother of the second boy who died that night called Mitch, bumped into each other on Hampstead Road in Camden, and started getting into a little altercation, which ended with Flips stabbing Mitch in his arm, neck and back, leaving the knife lodged into Mitch's bones and murdering him. An undercover policeman just happened to witness this whole situation and ran down Flips and arrested him, and now Flips is serving 17 years to life for this murder. After this, the beef in Camden went under some serious investigation by police, and members...
People, I know it's easy for me as an elder, as a grown man, to say, what are these men on? Squash them. What are you... Stop that. But when people are dying and people around you are dying, when it's your brother or your cousin or your uncle or your nephew that has been either killed or stabbed, I can't tell you to squash. It's gone beyond. It's not like they talked about a watch getting stolen earlier. At that point, you can talk to people and squash something. But when you're talking about multiple murders and killings, it goes. You can't expect people to see or hear reason when a situation has gone that left, and that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty. It's different when 2 areas war, and all the elders that were warring have grown up and done whatever they're doing. But when it's still fresh like this, and it's still the same people in that area that were involved in the original altercations and killings and murders, it's hard to squash. It's hard to squash. It's easy from the outside to say, what are you, so madness, and this is crazy, our youngsters are. But when you're actually involved in it, unless it's something where blood hasn't been spilt, and it's an old beef from older people in 2 different areas, it's hard to just...
Members from all sides started to get taken down for conspiracies, firearms and drug charges, and the beef started to die down a bit. But then 2019 hit, and quite a lot of the members that were locked up started to come out, and taking in consideration that 51st members, just before everyone started going to prison, had killed 3 71st members. 71st members started coming out of prison on some demon time, and were most definitely looking for revenge with no warnings. The first signs that 71st was really back was on a cold Tuesday in February. 1 AM in the morning, a 51st member called Gxng was walking past the Sainsbury's in Camden when a 4x4 crashed into him, and several 71st...
And I know that Sainsbury's as well, like the new one under that big thick steelwork. I know that. They used to go to that. There's a bar just down the road from it. I forgot what it's called. Oh, it weren't H bar, but there used to be a lot of events in there still.
Was walking past the Sainsbury's in Camden when a 4x4 crashed into him, and several 71st members jumped out on him like a pack of wolves, stabbing him repeatedly in his head and body, leaving him literally paralysed and not being able to walk. But that wasn't enough for 71st members. They wanted someone dead for their friends. So on April 1st, 2019, a suspected member of 51st called C. Miz and his cousin were walking down Grafton Road in Gospel Oak, Camden, when 4 71st members jumped out a stolen black car and started chasing them. C. Miz and his cousin split up, but unfortunately the men who jumped out of the car locked onto C. Miz, and C. Miz ended up dropping to the ground when the 71st member started to stab him repeatedly with machetes and then run from the scene. After this murder, 71st members made a song called Congo, and the reason why they called it Congo is because C. Miz was actually a refugee from Congo after him and his family fled the war from over there. And members repeatedly in their songs say that they get their weed from Congo, not Cali, pretty much just trying to say that they're smoking on C. Miz. And as I said before, the majority of these 71st members are Somalian. So after all of this, there was news going about in Camden Camden that 51st members are out on the lurk, and any Somalian they see they're killing.
Heard some really strong intelligence that there is going to be revenge for Calvin's killing and his friends.
For centuries, I lived life in the shadows, so I created Eternal.
That 51st members are out on the lurk, and any Somalian they see they're killing.
Heard some really strong intelligence that there is going to be revenge for Calvin's killing, and his friends have literally said they are going to go out and kill any Somali in retaliation. So I just want to make that really clear. This is from a young Somali woman in Camden who's 24 years old, and basically we strongly suspect they're going to go out tonight and kill a Somali.
Which is probably a bit of a stretch. But on the other hand, 71st members kept saying that they're warring with Jaliers, which is basically the smart.
That did sound like a stretch as well. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie.
Words for West African people, because you have to remember, despite Somalians being dark-skinned and African, a lot of Somalians don't really see themselves the same as other black people. So this was kind of turned into a race war between Somalian and black people in Camden, which is just all wrong for so many reasons. But 71st weren't happy enough with the killing of C. Miz. They wanted to spill more blood. So August 12, 2019...
I have to say, there is that weird division between so-called Somalis and so-called black people, bruv. We all black people. I can't not speak on that. We're all black people. End of story. You can't. There's no. That is that. You know what I mean?
With the killing of C. Miz. They wanted to spill more blood. So August 12, 2019, 6 members started circling the states of 51st members in a stolen Ford Fiesta and a stolen Seat. When they spotted 16-year-old culprit and other members coming out of a restaurant around 10:30 p.m. Culprit and other members ran to a nearby set of blocks near Euston Road. But 71st members found them later on that night, and 3 members jumped out and chased them down, catching up to the 16-year-old 51st member called Culprit. Culprit was running for his life and literally screaming for help, banging on neighbors' doors to let him in so he could escape his attackers. But when the 71st members caught up to him, 2 71st members held him, while a 3rd member repeatedly pushed a 1-foot-long zombie killer knife through his chest while it was coming out of his back. And when the 71st members were done, the killers were said to be running away after, laughing hysterically, which is what bystanders said. And Culprit, he was just any normal kid from London. He was talented at football and even had trials for Southampton Football Club, but started getting involved in...
You know when people say what a waste? And I keep coming back to this thing of their age, like, and them being babies, 16. At 16, right, you can't legally buy alcohol. He just said that he had trials in Southampton. If he was playing for Southampton and Barcelona or PSG said, we want to sign, I forgot what his name was, he couldn't just sign. He would have to ask his parents to sign the contract. 16 is no, you can't even go into a club at 16.
in a local gang and browse-decided football, and unfortunately became a victim of the streets. Now, as these back and forths normally go, 51st were now looking for revenge on their recent errors, and there were many stabbings across the month. And early on in September, there was a case of 3 killings in 5 days in Camden. One of these being a man from a completely different area all the way in East London, but unfortunately he was walking at the wrong place at the wrong time. So he was actually walking on Queen's Crescent Estate, which is a hotspot for 51st members, and was shot and killed in a drive-by, being mistaken for a 51st member. Just an hour before, another woman was stabbed to death just a few hundred yards from the situation, and 4 days later a 71st member called Nuts was stabbed to death by a gang of 51st members with machetes outside one of the busiest areas in London, Camden Tube Station. And for the longest, a lot of people didn't even know all this stuff was going on, until a 71st member called Suspect started jumping on the drill scene, calling himself the Camden Grim Reaper, and releasing some of the most disrespectful tunes towards his ops.
Yeah, I've definitely reacted to Suspect. Wow. I didn't know he was, well, they call themselves Active Gang in it, so I didn't realise it was that he was active. Well, I did, to be fair, from listening to the lyrics of his songs. And you don't know how active. I know they cover their faces and all the rest of it, but I don't know if they can be identified in their videos. I don't know how active they can be.
So much that police take down pretty much any song that the gang uploads, which really started to bring some attention to what's happening down there, and definitely got the attention of me, especially a song from Suspect called Dugout, which is probably one of the most disrespectful songs I've ever heard, and really makes you deep how tapped this whole beef is. In one of his lines he says,
"Same place we used to play runouts, the same place his chest got dug out. Same place I was telling you play out, is the same place."
To be fair, I've not even heard that song, but I've heard them say similar things on different songs. At some point though, it becomes, and I'm gonna defend the music a little bit. This is a slightly different situation, but at some point it becomes, I heard Jay-Z say before that I can make another 3-4 albums of memories, if you know what I mean. At some point it becomes what you did whenever it was. You're not really doing that anymore. I don't know if that's the case here, but you still did something then, so you can still write about it off memory. So at some point, some of the stuff that these guys are saying isn't what they did yesterday necessarily. It's something that was done in the past.
In one of his lines he says,
"Same place we used to play runouts, is the same place his chest got dug out. Same place I was telling you play out, is the same place I'm telling you come out."
which really makes you think, damn, these guys were close friends at one time, and now they're trying to kill each other. All stemming from a little small altercation that happened a couple years back. But anyway guys, that's it for today's video, and peace out.
Yeah, it's interesting, that is true. Surprising how when you see these beefs, oftentimes how close the neighbouring areas are. Like like I say, it's different when people have died, but before you could play football against that estate because it's down the road, and you all meet up at the park that's in between you lot and play football against each other. It's that mad, but because of whatever madness has gone down, these different areas are warring, so it's a mad situation. And a lot of people say it's just music, it's just lyrics. Leave the youths alone, let them get off the road. And I sincerely hope that, because I reacted to a guy called Gxng, who I assume is active, gang and Suspect, and they're talented guys, so their music could elevate them to somewhere different. But it doesn't look like, with so much of it being taken down and them not being able to come off the road completely, it looks like it's going to be difficult for them to let their music take them off the road. And I wish that it could. There's a guy called Ambush from Camden, and he's taken himself and his whole team off the road. He's taking his whole team with him, so it would be a great thing to see some of these guys do the same thing. But like I say, these the wounds run deep when people have lost their lives, so it's not the easiest thing to just say, oh, you know what, I'm not involved anymore, I'm gonna go and make music and live a happy life. You can't just, too much has happened for people to just say, oh, I'm out. You know what I mean? There's too much water under the bridge. That was a mad thing to react to, man. Damn.